Hi there, welcome to Twice. In this video I'd like to speak a little bit about the psychopaths, and I cannot speak about the psychopaths without speaking a little bit about the narcissist, because most people online, or most videos, popular videos online about the narcissist seem to confuse the narcissist with the psychopath. They talk about all these things that narcissist does, but that in fact usually the psychopath does. So the narcissist has a grandiose self view, but is a little bit lost in life and wouldn't go to malicious behaviors unless the narcissist is also a psychopath. So the psychopath is the one that is evil and ruthless and using people against each other, not the narcissist, unless the narcissist is also a psychopath. And according to some researchers and some people that have worked with psychopaths in prison, or that met lots of psychopaths because of their work in general as psychologists, psychiatrists, they claim that most psychopaths also have a narcissistic personality disorder. But remember that there are far more narcissists out there than there are psychopaths, and therefore it is very unfair to go and attack a narcissist which already has a very low self-esteem, as if he or she was a psychopath. And they do need maybe to change, but they shouldn't be harassed because of a misunderstanding, because of believing that the narcissist is capable of what the psychopath is doing. And the minute you do stalk somebody or harass somebody believing that he or she is evil, it actually makes you evil as well, and you are no better. So I'm just doing this video because I believe that it is very important I do it. And the psychopath is very different, as I said, and the most notable about the psychopaths is, of course, that they lack any kind of empathy or remorse. They don't even have feelings of disgust like everyone else do. So the psychopath is also charming and all these kinds of things, but actually the most notable is that the person lacks empathy. And psychopaths can also be people that are touched by nothing. Nothing really touches them. And if they hear a baby crying, it might irritate them because it's a disturbing sound for them in their ears, but the psychopath wouldn't feel sorry for the baby, or ask maybe if it would help him look like a hero or her. They would help this baby and tell everyone about what a great human being they are because they rescued somebody. And hopefully I will get to some examples of my experience, my long experience with a psychopathic female, and I can say it right now, there is no difference when it comes to evil and what a psychopath is capable of doing between female psychopaths and male psychopaths, and those women that have killed and that end up in prison, where most studies on psychopaths are made, are actually as ruthless, as evil, as self-serving as the male psychopaths. And another big trait when it comes to psychopaths is a sense of self-entitlement. They believe that they deserve money, they deserve good food, they deserve sex, they deserve to have you as a slave that can do everything for them. But at the same time, they are extremely manipulative, and you cannot figure them out right away. In fact, there are so many women that fell into the trap of marrying a psychopath and they ended up killed, either them or she and the kids, as it was the case lately. When it comes to the psychopathy, the psychopathy doesn't discriminate on race or culture or biology, or doesn't discriminate when it comes to culture, or ethnicity or race. Psychopaths are in all cultures or at all ethnicities, and they have been around in tribes as well. They were all often the people that were described as those that didn't want to work. Usually they wouldn't go hunting with the rest of the men in the tribe, because they are most often men, but there are female psychopaths as well. And they would stay at home, stay behind, and they would rape the women and steal the provisions and money and what have you. So this is what some tribes even actually got rid of these people from the tribe. They would push them in the water when nobody else looked and so on, because they knew that they would bring destruction when it comes to their tribe. And when it comes to their biology, because that's why I didn't want to mention biology, because biology is important when it comes to a psychopath. If you really hate a psychopath or dislike them deeply, then you can be considered a biological racist of some sort, because the psychopath differs from the normal population when it comes to their brains. And it's usually because they actually have another type of brain. And I'm going to check out a picture here. Now it's a mirror image, but I'm going to fix this. So you have the normal brain and the psychopathic brain. So you see here that there is a difference when it comes to the limbic system, and also the part of the brain that is in the frontal cortex and so on. When it comes to the psychopath, it's all blue. There is an atrophy. When it comes to the normal brain, it has far more activity, and this is what differentiates a psychopathic brain from a normal brain. So psychopaths don't have all emotions that other people or normal people do. They don't feel the way we do. Many psychopaths, when they are children, they see that people around them have so many emotions and they don't, and they believe that people are playing. Deep inside, they are evil, psychopaths, so they believe that everyone else is also evil, and they are extremely suspicious, and that's one of the reasons they use people and abuse people and kill people if they can, or if they know that they won't go to prison. It's basically because they believe actually that other people are as evil as they were, and if they wouldn't be evil, they would be evil towards him instead. And so that's the problem with the psychopaths. They don't have the same emotions. They an empath, when they see something, when something is wrong, when they are looking for a solution to a problem, they go deep within and they feel the situation out. They try to see things from as many perspectives as possible. So they are very smart compared to the psychopath, because the psychopath asks himself or herself, what's in for me? How can I win? So it's extremely simple. They only think about themselves. They are extremely self-serving. As I said, if they see a child crying, they wouldn't care less about the child suffering, but rather they would see themselves as victims of the the noise that that child is making. And that's how a psychopath is. And there's also a problem because some people don't really know why excuse me a little bit here, they don't really know the difference between psychopaths and sociopaths, and the difference is very much unclear actually, because you have many researchers, there is no real consensus regarding what is a psychopath, what is a sociopath, what is the difference. And previously, when you talked about the sociopaths, you talked about psychopaths that hurts other people. And now it's even more unclear because the structure of the brain of the psychopath is known and has been known because of this scans that are possible today. And the atrophy in the brain is known, and then there's a genetic component. They have so-called warrior genes, and because of this warrior genes, they become very competitive, so to speak, but they would dance on your grave if it would serve them, and if they would gain money, prestige, and power. Power and control is very important to them, to the point that they also control everything around them in their own home. So of course they control their wife and kids very strictly, but they also control things. So everything has to be very clean. So they have this disorder as well, compulsive cleaning compulsive disorder, you could call it that, because everything has to have a place, everything has to be under complete control as well. So there is the sociopath and the psychopath, and there's a dilemma there. So the psychopath, some say that the psychopath is very charming and lays low, while the sociopath is more outgoing and more aggressive towards people. So they claim that a sociopath is easier to spot than a psychopath. But some people also claim that the psychopath is the psychopath with the disorder, the biological disorder. They don't have as many neurons in their brains as other people, while the sociopath is somebody that lives in a society with psychopathic norms, and they follow those norms. Even though the person is not a psychopath, this person is socialized in psychopathic norms, and you see that very much in the ghettos, in the hood, or whatever you call them, in the United States, where people grow up in very criminal environments, where they see prostitution, where they see thieves, where there are murderers, where there are drug dealers, and so on, and they learn to survive. So they would learn this sociopathic skills, and that's what how I use the term sociopath. This person is not a psychopath and can change. A psychopath cannot change. A psychopath doesn't have much of a self-awareness either about their psychopathy, and the fact that because they don't really listen to other people either, they only think about what's in for them, how they can use people, how they can use their knowledge and so on, because they steal from others. They don't have even a personality of their own or a mindset of their own. They are chameleons, so to speak. And the person that grows up in such an environment with many psychopaths, many criminals, this person would learn to survive in such an environment, and they will pick up on behaviors and norms, and they learn all this sociopathic, psychopathic tricks, but they don't have the genetic disorder or the brain disorder, and therefore these people can change. When it comes to nature, I have talked about the fact that there is a biological disorder or genetic disposition to be a psychopath, but then there are some researchers that actually claim that, but it's very, very unclear and uncertain. They claim that you can be born indeed with these genes, with this warrior psychopathic genes, but then there's always some type of trauma that triggers them. On the other hand, I don't know if there is any kind of evidence that this is the case. They claim that otherwise, if these genes are not triggered, the person won't develop into a psychopath. But then, because being a child is such a big thing, people and researchers and parents, of course, would feel very bad about actually going and scanning children's brains, and parents, even though they have a psychopathic child, maybe because some of their ancestors were psychopaths themselves, it wouldn't be easy for them to give up in some way on this child. There is no proper cure, and of course, as I will speak about later, there are so many people with power positions that are filthy rich, that have lots of power as well, and a lot to say in society, that are psychopaths, that is almost impossible to do such stuff. And even though psychopaths are a little bit unaware, many of them do know, at least at some level, that they are not like everyone else, and they have been told many times that they are psychopaths by people. They don't always listen, of course, but there might be some situation in life or some documentary they see that kind of clears things up for them, and they might be half aware at least of the situation they are in. And when it comes to the books that I have read about psychopathy, they are one by Hare Robert, which I of course recommend, Without Conscience, The Disturbing World of the Psychopaths Among Us. And this is the best book. He is the one that created the psychopath test. And you have Kiehl, Kent Kiehl, the Psychopath Whisperer, and he is the person that scanned lots of psychopathic brains, and now it's certain that psychopaths, indeed even teenager psychopaths, have the lack of the atrophy basically in their limbic system and in their frontal cortex here, so they don't have a conscience, and there's a very bad connection between their emotions and their decision making, so they don't process everything well. So there is the communication between whatever little conscience they might have and their emotions, which act as a compass, in fact, is very bad. So therefore, the thing is that they are a bit more stupid than the normal person. Another book that I read is Snake in Suits. I believe that it was written by Hare or Hare Robert, and also another author, but I don't remember his name. And I also read two other books written by psychopaths. One is James Fallon, The Psychopath Inside, a neuroscientist's personal journey into the dark side of the brain. So this guy was a neuroscientist, and he found out that his brain was exactly the same as the brain of a serial killer, a murderer in prison. And he realized that his whole life people have been telling him, you're a psychopath, you're a psychopath, but he wouldn't listen. And he talks about his psychopathy, how he is as a person, but he wasn't abused when he was a child. He had a very loving mother, but still he claims that he is also a narcissist, and that he has all this traits, manipulative behavior. If there's a funeral, he would rather go to a party instead. He doesn't care, you know, he doesn't get touched by many things and so on, but still of course he has been cheating on his wife and so on, and he has a perfect normal wife and children. They don't have but in his ancestry there has been so many that killed other family members in his family, and he believes that he got such a good nurture from his mom that he didn't develop that murderous, very evil psychopathy. But on the other hand, you have to wonder a little bit, you know, his psychopathy wasn't triggered in any way, in a bad way at least. So you have to wonder if that's really true, you know, and if he is really as harmless as he presents himself to be. Imagine to go to a doctor and to know that this doctor is a psychopath. You know, he could actually decide to kill you on the operation table. And I believe that many do, because many doctors are psychopaths actually, and I will talk about it a little bit later. I also read a book. I'm going to find the name here because it was quite long ago. His name was Dutton, I believe, and he wrote a book about psychopaths and what's good with the psychopaths. So let's see. I don't remember what the name of the book was in his case. Let's see. I'm going to The Wisdom of Psychopaths by Kevin Dutton. And so the complete title of this book is The Wisdom of Psychopaths: What Saints, Spies, and Serial Killers Can Teach Us About Success. So he believes that psychopaths actually have a place in our society, and they do the dirty work, and that we, through New Age movements, also very much try to achieve that emotional state. We have, though, to work hard, not to feel anything, not to get touched by anything. We have to talk ourselves into so many things, while to the psychopaths, these things come naturally, very much, so to speak. But as I said, they are always after gaining something and after using and abusing, and that's the big difference. The New Age practitioner wouldn't do that. When it comes to the guy that is a psychopath himself, Fallon James, that wrote The Psychopath Inside, he even mentions that Gandhi might have been a psychopath, and I wouldn't believe it. You know, it's amazing, you know, because the psychopath is also a narcissist. So of course he would like to be the superhero, like Gandhi, that saved India from British rule and invented also a movement. I don't see the psychopaths doing anything in a peaceful manner unless they would send other people to die and so on, and it would be everything for his own gain. And they become very totalitarian, very controlling people, and that was of course not the case of Gandhi, and so on. So when it comes to the psychopathic Occupations, where there are many psychopaths. There have been tests, actually, according to Dutton, that wrote the book that I just mentioned, The Wisdom of Psychopaths. There are the biggest psychopaths are in working as bosses, as CEOs in companies. On the second place, there are lawyers. Thereafter, you have the people in media, in TV and radio. You have the salesperson thereafter. On the fifth is the surgeon. On the sixth, the journalist. On the seventh, the police officer. On the eighth is the clergy, the priests, the church people. On the ninth, the chef. Food is very important to the psychopaths. They can kill somebody, and thereafter they get more touched by the food, the dinner that they have thereafter, than the actual act of murdering somebody. And the 10th, the civil servant. So these are all occupations high in psychopathy, and it's not that strange. Lawyers, they don't give a damn about people. They want to win a case. They don't care if the opponent is not guilty most of the time, so they put not guilty people in prison for a lifetime. Sometimes there are many flaws in the legal system, especially I've seen a lot of documentaries, because I went and studied more about this psychopathy phenomenon, so to speak, and checked out a lot of crime videos and so on. So there are so many people that end up in prison for a lifetime, and even if they are found now not guilty in the end, somehow it's very difficult to get out. So even if they are put in prison for 20 years, but in the meantime everyone realizes that they are not guilty, it takes 8 to 10 to 15 years to get them out of there, so they still end up in prison and nobody cares. And sometimes you don't even get any money because they lose their lives in prison. Life is the most precious thing that people have. When it comes to media, TV, radio, people there, they don't give a damn about how their stories affect people. And now you have all this fake news. They don't care that they manipulate people, and with the most outrageous stories, and they make people hate each other, or they put crazy stories in people's head, especially people that don't know how to check the facts, and because they have never really learned about it, or they hate somebody else so much that they would actually rather believe that story because it suits them. The salesperson is also highly psychopathic. Then you have the surgeon on the fifth. So of course, Dutton says that a surgeon has to be very, very meticulous, and that's something that the psychopath can be. I don't know. Would you want to have surgery if you knew that your doctor was a psychopath? On the sixth place, you have the journalist, the same as the media, TV, radio person. They also have to feel entitled, to go and stalk people and interview them. If they say no to me once or twice, never mind, I'm out of here. On the seventh, the police officer. How many police officers do not kill in duty, even if they don't have to, or tase old ladies, and so on and so forth, and they get away with it? But still, they are not on the top of the list, so they are not the most psychopathic people. So that's a little bit of a relief. On the eighth is the clergy, the church people. We all know about all the history of killing people in the name of God. It's still going on right now, especially in the Islamic world. And we had this torture also in our own world previously, because of the Inquisition and other reasons, so much torture. And it was even written, I believe, in the Bible, not sure about that one, that if you did this, you had to have this punishment or whatever. So it was really cruel, really cruel stuff, in the name of God, or because somebody was believed to be a Jew or was a Jew, and so on. So a lot of torture, imprisonment, and all done in the name of God, and that had to be a psychopath. Of course, priests had enormous amount of power. And nowadays, we have the scandals with all this pedophilia in the churches, and some do claim that psychopaths, some pedophiles are also psychopaths, and of course they might be, because they rape children, and many times they also murder these children. So for one single sex act, with a stolen child, they would kill that child. This child doesn't mean more to them than some type of object that they can abuse and use, and then take their life from them. So of course the pedophile is most likely also a psychopath, or most of them are. And then on the ninth, you have the chef. So they are very much into food, psychopaths. And it doesn't mean that every fat person out there is a psychopath, but it's not like that. But as I said, the psychopaths enjoy this food, and maybe even we had, of course, more psychopathic men in the past, also because of all wars, and probably psychopathy was also developed genetically, also because there were people that lived very difficult lives. They had to shut down their emotions sometimes, and maybe this is what happened, and it all comes to a price, or they became insensitive, some people, and this is a genetic trait that might have helped some people in some situations. And actually, there were Dutton writes about some Swedish warriors in the past that would be very much like the psychopaths, or have this psychopathic traits, and they would, in the time of war, really protect the population. But then when there was no war, they would go after their own people. They would fight with them, kill them, torture them, and whatever. So they needed to get out their aggressiveness and their need to hurt others, which is also very psychopathic. So they try, as I said, nothing touches the psychopaths, but they do love power, they love the control. And we normal people, we live very much through our emotions, and we use them as a compass, as an inner insight. They don't have that. They can tap in some emotions, but the most important, empathy, they don't really have it. They can sympathize with somebody. Let's say they also go through all kinds of things in life, and maybe they go through something a little more negative, so they can understand a person that goes through a similar thing. That is not a psychopath, of course, but it's not the same like empathy. If they see that somebody's hit in their head, it's not them are hit in the head, so it doesn't matter to them. It's not like they feel anything, because, as I said, I didn't say it, but I'm going to say it now. Psychopaths have a real problem with abstract thinking. For some reason, they don't understand humor many times. If they are very smart, and many psychopaths are quite smart, but not as smart as other people that can envision stuff. The psychopaths can also have many fantasies, and they also live out their fantasies, but it's almost always something dangerous or even evil, like rapes and sexual fantasies of all kinds, like stealing children and raping them or whatever it might be. And who knows what these people with power, that work in the military and so on, that the military is also, of course, high when it comes to psychopaths, and there are now and then, you have this people with generals and high positions. There was a flight captain or something like that that was killing women that got caught in the end, and a pilot, I believe, and he even flew the plane of the Queen Elizabeth, I believe. Then recently there was also a policeman that got caught decades later for being a serial killer. And how can they get away? Of course, they use power position in many cases, but otherwise they are really untouched by their actions, so they won't react. And sometimes when these psychopaths confess, now the police knows how to get them to confess, and some of them do confess because like in the recent case where there was the psychopath that killed his wife and 2 children, there is some self-destructive tendency in them, because they don't really they can't think long term. They might charm a woman, get married to her, have children, and then ask themselves, but I work for this little annoying children, so I have to get rid of them and keep the house and the car. That's how they think, and they don't think that they might go to jail maybe. And in some sense they are also self-destroying because they kill their own children, so their genetics can't move on to the next generation. So maybe there is something within them that is kind of a kamikaze, type of person. And you also think about these people that blow themselves up to kill others with them, and they often take others with them. And you ask yourself if these are not psychopaths, because they give up also on life, because you have to be responsible in life, and especially nowadays, you have to work hard, and you are watched everywhere, and so on and so forth. So in a sense they do destroy themselves also. And civil servant, I don't know what to say about it. So when it comes to the behavioral patterns, when it comes to psychopath at work or in the workplace, there are some behavioral patterns, but I had one situation like that. I got to know a psychopathic female pretty well, and she was actually a very, very ruthless female, very manipulative. She was a predator. I remember once, not only did she put everyone against everyone else and destroyed a whole organization, everyone was fighting with everyone else. She also manipulated people to go against each other and to do her bidding. She would take credit for their work. You couldn't tell her anything, because she would go and out on air, on radio, and she would say everything you told her. She wouldn't mention you as the source, or she would even tell everyone that she taught you everything, and all these kinds of things. So this is real psychopathic behavior. I didn't know how to handle her at that time, and thereafter I did read lots of books about psychopaths. And of course we all deal with psychopaths in our lives, but this relationship was very different, because I had to deal with her daily for 3 years. So it kind of blew my mind, the thing that she would do. She would cross every kind of social norm and disrupt every social norm, and that's dare to say things and to do things that a normal person wouldn't. So The behavioral patterns of psychopaths are public humiliation of others, malicious spreading of lies. But I wouldn't say that she would publicly humiliate others. She would always go behind other people's back. So she would be friends with everyone, but she would make sure that everyone would hate each other. And she would tell, if she would first get to know you very well, she would find out everything about you, and then she would know kind of what annoys you, let's say. And she would tell you that somebody else did just that, the thing that annoyed you the most, and that would create problems. She would talk about anything. If you find out, like I kind of figured out after 2.5 years that she was a psychopath, so I told somebody else, this woman is a psychopath, and so on. She found out, of course, because there were some people that were loyal to her. They liked to be pushed around and so on, and they felt useful, actually. And she hated that. She didn't like that. She didn't laugh at any joke. She didn't understand humor. She didn't really know, are you joking or not? But some psychopaths do kind of figure out that you are laughing, and they could even laugh when they hear your joke. In their ears, it wouldn't sound like a joke. So they do have this problem with abstract thinking. And even if they understand that this is a joke, they might not laugh, but they might feel happiness maybe if they use you, they abuse you, and stuff like that. This would make them laugh, and so on. So if I continue with this list with the behavioral patterns, they are remorseless or devoid of guilt. Yeah, they don't feel guilt, they don't care. They frequently lie to push his or her point. Yeah, she did lie a lot about everyone else, about her skills, about her past, about anything. She produces exaggerated bodily expressions as a means of gaining attention. Yeah, she was definitely also the psychopath that would also be a narcissist. And she would, another thing with psychopaths is that they keep eye contact with you more than a normal person would do. So they are actually blinking. Less often. The more emotional you are, the faster you blink. So when you see these people blinking all the time, unless they have an eye problem of some sort, they are basically very empathic people. They are thinking a lot, very deep people. uh, and the more they stare, especially with those cold eyes, the more likely that they are psychopaths. Yet that shouldn't be something you should watch, because everyone would maybe uh, stare for a couple of, you know, stare at some point maybe, or they learn because of journalist school or because of other reason, because they learn how to communicate with others, to keep eye contact with people. And psychopaths will do that a lot. They keep eye contact with you, and therefore psychopaths are really so mesmerizing and captivating just because of that, because they have this intense gaze. But and if you see the mugshots of psychopaths in jail, women or men, they all have this crazy eyes, really, because they can. In my case, it hurts. My eye hurts. I can't keep very long eye contact with somebody. I often look away and so on, and many people do. But when it comes to psychopaths, it doesn't matter the situation. They would look you in the eyes even if they're lying, especially if they are lying. So they can express all kinds of behaviors and amplify anything, because it's always a show in their mind. And even when they would interview the psychopathic killers, after the interview, they would tell the interviewer, "Oh, this is good shit. This is going to be so great. I look great. I'm going to look great." you know. So because many psychopaths also have a narcissistic personality disorder, but as I said, a narcissist is not necessarily a psychopath. Rather, there are far more narcissists that are more or less harmless than there are psychopaths, and psychopaths are the very deranged and very dangerous ones. So the psychopath also rapidly shifts between emotions, and they use this to manipulate people or cause high anxiety. So they can shift between being very charming and warm, and suddenly they are cold and they ignore you completely. Intentionally isolates people from organizational resources. Yeah, so they can actually go in. If they know that you want to do something, they will try to interfere because they want to be the ones on top. They are quick to blame others for mistakes or for incomplete work, even though he, she is guilty. So they always blame somebody else. Even if they kill people, they will blame it on the victim, of course. And they encourage co-workers to torment, alienate, harass, or humiliate other peers. And that's also a very big thing with psychopaths and in society in general, in psychopathic environments, where they actually, as I have spoken also about the atmosphere, the fascist atmosphere, you often have this highly narcissistic psychopathic leader that would encourage people and reward even people to harass other people. And of course, it's not so much about the fact that they enjoy harassing these people, but it pulls away the attention from themselves. So they push the attention towards a victim, you know, like in this case when you know, people make videos about the narcissist as if the narcissist that is so easy to spot is a psychopath, which is not true. So the psychopath also takes credit for other people's accomplishments and steals, sabotages other people's work. They do that a lot. They have to be the ones that know it all, and they often steal, of course, co-workers' work, and they present themselves as the heroes, the ones that know, even though they stole the information. Okay, so another thing is that psychopaths refuse to take responsibility for misjudgments and errors. Yeah, they can't admit that they are wrong, or they cannot say that they are sorry, because, and that's what happens in their relationships, because their relationships usually end maybe not so much because they use people, but because they never take responsibility and they never say I'm sorry. But some psychopaths do learn to say that they are sorry, but usually they can't, they won't, because as I said, many of them also have a grandiose personality or narcissistic personality disorder, or because of some other reason. And they can respond inappropriately to stimuli, maybe a forced laugh. Yeah, you know, that's not a reason to think that everyone that has a forced laugh is a psychopath, of course, because sometimes everyone has a forced laugh. You know, all these traits have to come together somewhere, and the most important thing with psychopathy is the lack of empathy. And yeah, psychopaths also feel very threatened if they see that somebody is smart, somebody is good, somebody represents an ideal that they will never be able to live up to. They feel very threatened, and they might threaten that person or destroy that person completely. And therefore, you see in the world, there are not psychopaths that are being assassinated or murdered, but usually people like Gandhi, like Martin Luther King, this very highly, empathic people that really think things through and actually find genius solutions or ways in which to change a society and so on. So the psychopath is actually threatened by really smart people, really good people, and everything that represents life, beauty, laughter, happiness. They would like to crush your happiness as soon as they see it, because they cannot feel it themselves, and in a sense, it brings you to the same miserable level they are at, even though they don't really feel miserable either. In prison, psychopaths are often not even depressed. They seldom cry, but they can cry sometimes, like just like everyone else. And sometimes they cry, of course, because they want something, they want to play somebody. And usually female psychopaths, they are wrongly diagnosed as histrionic. So histrionic is a little bit like the old hysteric woman, so she would use her feminine traits to play the victim, to faint, and all these kinds of things to manipulate the people around her, to help her, to give her what she wants. And of course, a female psychopath would also manipulate their children. There are cases where a mother would, for example, how a female psychopath might behave would be the mother that makes the daughter or the child pretend that he or she is sick all the time, so that she can get money from everywhere and donations and all kinds of things. A female psychopathic mother would go that way, wouldn't care. They don't even care, so to speak, about their own children. But some of them take good care of their family, but they go outside of the family and do all kinds of things, or at least outwardly they look like a good family or a happy family or an okay family. And many people do hide their personal problems, because there are so many people around them that people hate each other. Usually they have this happiness when other people are going through problems, so people don't always talk about their problems with others, because they don't want others to know that they are sad or that they are unhappy, and so on. And okay, so it says here, this is from Wikipedia actually, this list. They set unrealistic and unachievable job expectations to set employees up for failure. Yeah, so they enjoy hurting people. They enjoy to show others that they are stupid. And they know all these tricks. As I said, they are the cats, and we, all other people, are mice. And they refuse or are reluctant to attend meeting with more than one person. Yeah, they do like that intimacy, so that they can manipulate each and everyone separately, and usually everyone fights with each other, while the psychopath is friends with everyone. And they split everyone up, separate and conquer. So they refuse to provide adequate training and or instructions to singled out victims. They invade the personal privacy of others. So you have this spying problem also in our society, with so much technology now that can be really small There are all from smart dust to tiny cameras or whatever. Your mobile phone, your computer camera can spy on you, and so on and so forth. So of course, these are more or less in use and abuse. This is technology that can be easily abused, especially when there aren't any kind of real laws that prohibits um, this thing, And you saw what happened to Snowden as well, and also to the Australian. I forgot his name now all of a sudden. I've spoken now for 50 minutes. So Assange, of course, when they hack those that spy on us or that expose them, they are suddenly enemies of the state. And the state is usually very psychopathic as well, because many people in power positions you have the corporate world, you have the medical field, you have the police and the military, and even the priests. So clearly, everyone watches their own backs, but they can also kind of cooperate with each other because they know that they are the same. They get rid of the competition. Whoever wants to see good in the world and justice and kindness and so on and so forth, and they are extremely self-serving. And it says here that the psychopath also has multiple sexual encounters with other employees, develops new ideas without real follow-through, is very self-centered and extremely egoistical. Often conversation revolves around them. Great deal of self-importance. Yeah, so the psychopath and also the narcissist, especially the psychopath, also has a narcissistic personality disorder. Then the conversation is about them, but the psychopath is very egoistical. It's all about what they want, how they can use you, and they also borrow money or other material objects, and they don't give it back, but they can ask you for money, especially if you gave them previously or helped them out because they seemed in need. They know that you are a source of income, and the first 2 times they might ask you nicely, but then the third time you have to give it to them or they destroy you. They already have you, so to speak. They have already created a lot of trouble or put people against you, and so on. So psychopaths are extremely controlling, extremely dangerous, and they will fool anyone, even people that are very experienced with psychopaths. I only had one long connection with psychopathic female, but other people worked with psychopaths because they were the psychologists in prisons with dangerous people and so on. So they know far more, and psychopaths don't like the fact that they are psychopaths. I even I read somewhere that when a murderer found out that he was a psychopath, he didn't know about psychopaths previously, or he didn't think that he was one. And when he found out, he went to tell the inmates that he is a Superman, and he told everyone there, that his colleagues there in prison, that they had to call him Superman from now on. And usually when people find out that somebody is psychopath, they already they jump from social connection to social connection, and they play everyone basically. And they will always even if when the victim finds out that he or she has been duped for years, maybe the psychopath is already several steps ahead, several relationships ahead. And that's why I believe that people in authority, people with high positions, uh, and so on, should take tests, or their brains should be scanned, because the the more you have psychopaths in power, that 1, 2 to 4% maybe of the population being all in power and destroying our lives and society and health and whatever it might be, you can't be safe in such a world. And the history will only repeat itself over and over again, because we don't have normal people in power. And actually, I know that having a psychopathic child would be, I know that I would get attached to anything, that is small and needs help and so on. And would I have, let's say that I would give birth to a psychopathic child for some reason, maybe the father would be a psychopath, or maybe I don't know. I don't think that I have any of that in my family. My dad was narcissistic, but definitely I don't think that he was a psychopath anyway, and I haven't heard about any murders in the family ever, a suicide or something like that, a distant relative, but otherwise nothing that big, so if you it's very difficult to cope with the idea that your child is actually a psychopath and what to do with this child, but I believe that there should be more resources put in discovering early if a child is a psychopath, because these people can grow up to become the next Hitler, the next mass murderer, and so on and so forth. And they will take advantage of other people. They will rise to the top eventually, or end up in prison after killing some people. And if they get to the top, they usually would be very self-serving, destroy more of the climate, destroy more people around him, abuse women, abuse children, and so on and so forth. So the psychopaths, even though if I said that I mentioned those work jobs where you found more psychopaths, or the more psychopaths, the psychopath can be your teacher that might for some reason hate on you, and you won't get to go to college or whatever it might be, discriminate and so on, because they don't like you, so every kind of personality disorder gets a lot of attention, especially when as it is the case now with children that have attention disorder and so on. It becomes more and more common. And even about that, I read lots of articles about kids that had none of it and still, but they were on medication, like, because teachers, a behavior also comes in a certain situation, and there are two in a relationship all the time. So most of the time these accounts come from the teacher, and the teacher is a human being, is not a machine, so they assess children. Maybe the teacher is too boring, that could also be the case, and the child can't stay, they have to sit down and listen to something very boring. So in my mind, this is nonsense when there are so many more dangerous people out there than not paying attention to class, like it's a big deal, let's medicate everyone just because of that. There are people and people, but the question is this people going to hurt somebody? That's the most important thing. Is this person going to think about somebody that needs help, and so on and so forth? So basically this I believe that it's very important to really find out who is, but have a brain scan of even children, if to see if they are psychopaths or not, and then maybe there is some empathy training that can be, because children usually are not classified like adults when it comes to psychopathy and things like that, because they don't want to stigmatize the psychopath, even though the psychopath stigmatizes everyone else and uses and abuses everyone else, you know. So that's basically the problem with psychopathy. I believe that people should not have high positions in society or be our teachers or our neurosurgeons or our surgeons. When I go to the hospital, I want to know that the doctor did everything he or she could, you know, because otherwise you can end up dead. Actually, there was a study that was made also in America and one in Israel, I believe. And when doctors were on strikes, there were less deaths, you know, so you have to wonder if the doctors are really that good, if it's that good to not to check who becomes the doctor, because the doctor also has lots and lots and lots of power. And therefore, you know, my opinion is that psychopaths do lots of harm and very, very, very little good. And they should be, since they are children, kind of controlled a little bit, because otherwise they will control the rest of us and and they are ruthless. They don't have empathy. They don't have a heart. They can kill and get away with it. They can use the system to kill and get away with it. They start wars. They abuse people. They send so young kids in wars. There is all this, you know, industries where women are extremely abused. And it's all the psychopathic trend, you know. It's more than just you know, enjoying you know, like the adult industry and so on. You have all these women on all these positions, and they stick in them, you know, like very large objects, and it's all about cruelty, you know. So these are also very psychopathic people, actually. And also when it comes to films, many film directors are also psychopaths. That's what Dutton came to. That was the conclusion of the Dutton study. But I believe that he also has in his family psychopaths. He claims in his book that his father, I believe, was a psychopath. So of course he's worried about his children and so on and so forth. And he doesn't want them to be somehow feared, or his grandchildren, or maybe some psychopaths high up psychopaths is paying him to state that, to write this book. But still, if you read his book, he doesn't really state that they are so great, but there are certain portions of the book and that would claim this. The psychopathy term can also be used politically, of course. Like if I take Sweden as an example, you never heard about psychopathy in Sweden. There were a couple of books in the library, you know, like, and I believe that I read one long ago, but I didn't think so much about it because I didn't really have an experience with the psychopath that was that deep to really understand. And I don't know, it was just curiosity. I knew a little bit, but I didn't think about it too deeply. But I also, the Swedish understanding of the psychopath was previously very much a person that doesn't follow norms in society. So Sweden is very much about everyone being the same, and nobody should deviate from the norm. And the risk was that the psychopath would become, you know, the person that had something to say. And Sweden is not very open when it comes to criticism or to having your own opinions, because until the 80s, I believe, Sweden didn't have Freedom of Speech Act, if you can imagine that, Sweden. Everyone knows those good things about Sweden, and therefore, you know, the psychopath term risked to be used on anyone that would deviate from the norm. And I read an article that the Communist Party actually stopped this term to get into people's consciousness and to be used in discourses and discussions and debates, because they believed that just because they had another opinion about how you should rule a country and live a life, they would be stigmatized and called psychopaths just because of that. But of course, at that time, it was very difficult to know that the psychopaths had a brain disorder. And it was also believed that it was very difficult to determine what empathy was and who was an empath, who had empathy and who didn't. And so the psychopath was used very much politically. So people were scared very much a little bit that if they deviated from the norm, they would be psychopaths and so on. And I believe that the same goes a little bit in Canada, because Canada is also a little bit like Sweden in a sense. I believe that there's a lot of group cohesion. Everyone is the same, very homogeneous. Like Sweden is, even though, you know, Sweden has immigration, but people are grouped. There are Swedes and there are immigrants, you know, they don't necessarily mix that much. So it's very important also to realize that the term psychopath, as any other personality disorder or diagnosis, actually can be used politically. In the communist bloc a long time ago, anyone that was very smart or that had a different opinion about you know, political life, or was against communism, would maybe end up in crazy people's house. And that's also something to think about. And this is all about psychopathy. Possibly I would have so much more to say, and there are some stories also that I could share about the psychopath I had to deal with and how they express also their lack of empathy, but maybe I will talk about this another time, because right now I have now spoken for 1 hour, and I feel that the video becomes too long and maybe too boring. And I hope that you enjoyed the video, that I wasn't so boring, and I hope that it somehow helps or enlightened anyone, and so on and so forth, as you usually hope when you do a video. And maybe I won't get any views because everyone is checking out the videos about narcissists, which are not psychopaths. I repeat, the psychopath is psychopath, the narcissist is something else, and those are very much confused right now, and it's unfair to the narcissist because there are far more narcissists, and possibly the condition, the narcissism, is very widespread, very common right now. There have been books written about a narcissistic society, and that was the case like 10 years ago. So that's all. Thank you for watching. Bye bye.